First one having to do with what eye to look at when you're speaking to somebody. So somebody asks, which eye do you look at when talking to somebody? What is best? So the way that the body works, the left side of the body is receptive, the right side is penetrating. Right? Another way to put that is the left comes in, the right comes out. And we like to simplify that by saying left brain, right brain. But the thing is that the brains aren't completely doing different tasks. They're both doing every task. There's just different sides of the body that does things better. So those parts of the brains get coordinated to do certain activities. But in terms of the eye thing, you really want to be, if you want to connect with somebody, you want to be looking at the left eye, their left eye, which is going to be basically your right side of your body. It's really easy if you start noticing, it's really easy to be looking and talking to somebody, speaking to their right eye, because their right eye, you don't really feel so much of them. All right, so is this still true if you're left-handed? So that's an interesting question, and I need to look into that. I actually don't know if everything gets reversed if you're doing the majority of your tasks on your left hand. I believe less than 10% of the population is left-handed. So with this whole energetic thing, I'm assuming that everything stays the same with the Ida and the Pingala and the nadis of the body, that map stays the same. However, I don't want to speak in definites because I don't know. Number one, I'm not left-handed. So that was a simple question, which eye to look into. There's also rituals that you can do where a bunch of people get together and they all stare into the left eye of their partner for many minutes or even hours before negotiating or handling disagreements. That's something ritualistic you can do. So I'm going to go over something on self-sabotage. I'm going to be trying to look at the comments for questions. And while I'm doing that, I've got all these flowers that my Purium upline stopped by and gave Seema and I. So I put some filtered water into that jug, and I'm about to cut the stems and remove some leaves on all of them. And that's what I'm going to be doing while answering questions. So next question, I get a lot. Oh, this flower is broken. I get a lot from people who are worried about their self-sabotage, but at the same time, they're worried about the people that they're attracting. So this goes for people in a couple or even people that are single. People are worried about attracting abusive partners or partners that take advantage of their weaknesses. Wow, these things are strong. I had to cut you off, buddy. I don't know what you're gonna do now with your life. Okay, so the thing with ourself, we're all on this journey, right? So I got a lot of questions, especially from, I would say that if I average what I think men are, let's just say there's more questions about this from women, but I would say that it's probably equal of a concern between the two sexes, assuming that there's only two in this conversation, even though I have friends that are both sexes, but there's still both of the two sexes. How do I cut this? So I've actually never done this before, so if anyone wants to give me advice, this is the sharpest knife that I have, and that didn't look like it was a very smooth cut. I actually think I'm supposed to be doing this underwater. And I definitely don't think I should be doing it with scissors, but I think I'm going to, just because it's going to be easier. Self-sabotage. So a lot of us feel that we should be complete, and that's the problem, right? We should be complete, and so when we have breakdowns, we get upset about it. We get upset with ourselves mostly, and then even start blaming other people because that's the easiest thing to do for our brain. But if we start looking at ourself as a journey or as a progression, then we can have a little bit more leniency on ourselves. I need to get some advice from you guys. Cut on an angle, use your grip, and then use the knife in to cut towards your thumb. There's 10,000 ways to wash dishes. Use your grip and use the knife in to cut towards your thumb. I don't know, that doesn't sound very safe. How do you handle the balance of the human experience with knowing you are an eternal being that should be on the path to the highest self? I'll cover that next. So let's just talk about if you feel like you're not enough, coupled with the fact that you're scared that you'll never attract somebody who's enough for you, it's kind of like you're doomed in two different ways. You're doomed because you feel that you suck, and then you're doomed because you feel that the only people that you can attract suck. So you don't really set yourself up for the best framework of mind, and then you get stuck into this fear dynamic or this guilt dynamic or this anger dynamic that then percolates into every single area of your life. And so how do we get out of that? How do we, and if you guys ask a question, the phone's really far away, so just keep on re-asking it if it feels like I have time to answer it. The way that we get out of that is we realize that we're a progression. And if you feel like you've been studying and reading and going to courses, this is what everyone messaged me is about. Like, oh, I've done this, I've done that, or in the last year I've done this or done that. They don't realize that like this entire life is the progression, the entire life. So if we are expecting on becoming an expert or professional or gifted in any single area of life in 1 year, then that's where the issue is, right? Because we're like, I put in all this work over the last 3 years and I'm still having breakdowns and like this whole thing sucks and I'm just a loser forever. And they don't realize that 3 years in anything, you're a beginner. You're a beginner. It doesn't matter. You could even go get a degree in 4 years. You're still a beginner. You're still somebody who's going to make mistakes. You're still essentially a rookie. So realize that. And when you go online and you see somebody like me, you see somebody like a woman making a post and she seems all well put together, like guys, I was actually today just looking up like what postgraduate courses look like at several different schools. But 23 years ago, I started going to school for psychology. 23 years ago, okay? And I was 17, starting to go to school for psychology, and I never stopped studying it. I never stopped passionately trying to learn about this human existence. And in 23 years, I still get into arguments about stupid little things with my wife, okay? And that's all still a reflection. It's going to happen. These things are continuously going to happen no matter how much you've studied. And in fact, the challenges are going to get harder. And I don't mean harder meaning like harder. I mean, it could even become like sillier. They could more dynamic or just like doesn't make sense. They can become more confusing. That's what I want to say. The challenges can become more confusing on, is it really you? Is it really me that has the problem, or is it them that has the problem, or how do we solve this, right? Because you think that you know everything that there is to know about yourself, but you don't realize that there's still more to learn. And the only way to realize that there's still more to learn is when issues come up in your life. And so recognize that the issues are the reason. The issues are life. You know, what do they say? Life is suffering. I don't know where that came from. Zen? Buddha? I don't know. So once you have recognition of that, you have some tolerance to yourself, and then you realize that other people are going through the same journey, and then you can meet people where they are because you're there as well. And the good thing about like being on the path of self-development is that if you stop, then you're not going to be in the realm of other people who are on the path of self-development. So if you're really passionate about developing yourself, stay on the journey. Stay on the journey. Make it a lifetime thing. And you will develop friends, you will develop lovers that are also on the journey merely by the fact that these will be the people that you're interacting with. The skill sets you will learn socially will be based on interacting with these types of people because this is where your interests lie. The next question was about like how, I don't remember exactly how it was phrased, but how do you cope with being a human being when you know that you're like an eternally existing entity, something like that. And the thing is that our ability to perceive life through multiple perspectives, that ability is basically the scale of being an individual human being on third density, third dimensional level, and being what most would consider a god. And when I say a god, people get triggered, right? Because they're like, you can't be a god. There's no way you can be a god. And it's not necessarily that being godly, godlike means that the individual is a god. It's more along the lines of the individual is allowing the omnipresence of God or the universe or source or the matrix or some other weird alien creator that made this entire human alien ant farm thing. You're allowing the source of God, what a lot of people in English speaking countries call God, you're allowing the source of God to come through you as an individual. So being one with source or being God, it doesn't matter how you say it. It can look egotistical. It could look like you think you're better than everyone else. But the real perspective, there's really not a way to say it differently, but what I think most people are trying to get to is that they're allowing God to come through you as an individual. And so back to what I was saying, having multiple what does this God figure have, or this source intelligence have? It has all the perspectives, right? That's the whole point of this entire thing, is that this realm is created so that whoever created it gets to experience all of the perspectives of all of the selves on this plane. So your ability to view things from multiple perspectives makes you more godly. Get that? The more perspectives you can inherit and be, there's between 1 and infinite, all right? Infinite perspectives is the stance of God. I'm just gonna say God. I'm putting it in quotes because I know a lot of you are allergic to the word God, but I'm just gonna say God. So we got 1 to infinite. Infinite being the standpoint of God, 1 being the standpoint of you. Now, if you know that there's more to you than the you that you were taught in school, then that means that you're somewhere on that scale between 1 and infinite, right? Maybe you're at 5 perspectives. And one of those 5 perspectives is you know that you actually are this infinite being, even though you don't have all the perspectives to prove so, but you have the perspective of knowing that you, at least at fundamental knowledge, know that you are already existing as that. So yes, we can have the knowledge that we are all that there is to be, but what good is it to, what I see is that people feel like that's what it is, so then they feel like nothing else here matters. Now what you're doing when you're doing that is you're saying, okay, I've got these 5 perspectives, And this one that I was born into, that I am the thing that's important, this ego self, this third dimensional self, you're like, okay, fuck that perspective. I'm going to go with this perspective, and this perspective is the one that I'm got. And so I'm just going to stop working. I'm going to stop cutting my hair, stop shaving, blah, blah, blah. You see that I went through it as well. Like, I'm going to stop caring so much about all this material stuff. And you're just basically choosing out of the whole perspective, the whole reason why we came into this physical reality where we're bounded by space and time. You're just forgetting about it. You're just saying, all right, I would rather have this other perspective, but now you're back to one perspective. Do you see that? Now you went from having one perspective to 2, 3, 4, 5 perspectives, and that fifth perspective, you're like, oh, I like this better than the rest. I'm going to get rid of you, and now you're back to one perspective. Now the issue with that is that this other perspective, where things like money don't matter, or things like personal achievement and success and competition, and the things that are like exaggerated in our society today, yes, but when you're like, I'm choosing out of that, you're choosing out of those perspectives, and you're not practicing them. You're not getting good at them, and you're actually that's actually, okay, let me back up. That's actually okay, because it's a progression. Sometimes you can't handle 5 perspectives at once. But then after a while, you handle that 5th perspective where you're in the awareness that you're everything, and you don't want to worry about the job thing, or you don't want to worry about the fact that everybody on this world is stupid and you don't want to associate with them. So you go into the woods and you operate within this new perspective for a little bit. Some people never come out of the woods, right? Some people never come down from the mountaintop, and they just stay there. And those people can gain a lot of wisdom, and sometimes people flock to those people to gain this alternative perspective. Now here's the thing. I don't think you need to stay in the cave. What is that you're holding in your hand? Oh, I'm chopping flowers and putting them in a vase. I don't think you need to stay in a cave, because there's a lot more on this world to see. There's a lot more in this world that we came here to be. And if you've been here for 20, 30, 40 years, there's so much more. There's a lot more here to experience. And it's great if you think things like physical health are most important. It's great if you think things like meditation are most important, breath work. But let's try to incorporate that perspective with the rest of the perspectives that you inherit, and have more of an integral process of consciousness. As new ways of being come into your scene, you don't have to shed everything else that you've currently known. You don't have to like diss all of that, but integrate what you learn to be with who you've been. Got that? Now, how this could look is that you don't need to continue being the person, but you know that it was foundational. Just like none of us who's watching right now is their 8-year-old self, right? But we don't necessarily cast away the 8-year-old self. We don't wish that we were never 1 through 8 years old. We look at that as a chapter of foundational learning, when we learn how to walk, when we learn how to eat, when we learn how to talk, when we learn how to relate with the environment, when we learned, we went through a sense where we didn't even know what self was, from like 0 to 2 years old. And the whole point is that that's a chapter. And so look at everything as your life as a chapter, as opposed to a mistake, which comes back to the original thing I was talking about, which is this is all a progression. We are progressing through life. So let me scroll through, see if there's any other questions. We're here in order to experience this. We cannot be everything here. We came from nothing, we will be nothing, but nothing is everything. And everything is everything. So that was from Sovereign Being, Influx 33. Okay, so somebody just, how do we operate differently with money in this new earth? So that's up to us, right? It is up to us to figure out the money thing. Now, everyone's wondering, like, is there going to be a money-free system? And does that mean that I don't need to care about money now? Guys, money has always changed form. Okay, so even if there's a money-free system, if you're not good with paper money now, you're not going to be good with whatever is valued in that new system. Okay? Nobody's going to come save you. There's just not going to be like, oh, we're getting rid of money, so if you didn't have paper money, you get access to the same thing that everyone else gets access to. That's what we think is coming. And it's just not. There was a time before money. There's a book called Debt. And there's a ball and chain on the cover of the book. It explains where money came from. All right. At first, there was IOUs. If I wanted some flowers from you, but I was an apple farmer and I didn't have any apples with me now, but your flowers were blooming right now, it would make sense for both of us to make an IOU. I'll give you these flowers now, and when your apples are ready, you owe me a bushel of apples. And now I have this, it wasn't paper, because they didn't have paper. They would use like sticks with marks in it and stuff. And actually some of the oldest known versions of writing in cuneiform text are just endless notes of transactions. So that might even be the reason why we even started writing. Come to think about it, in the current way that we write now, because pictures tell way more than words do. I'm going off on tangents upon tangents, but I'm going to keep on going. Pictures tell so much more than the characters of words. Words are like meaningless. It's like a middleman. All right, so imagine what a word is. It's a middleman to clarify. So it almost reduces context to simplify what the message means. Someone said they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Yeah, it is. So if you think about it, language, pictographs, is a picture. It explains, it expresses more, right? If you take a picture of an elephant, when somebody looks at that elephant, they see the elephant. But we've taken elephant and we've transcribed it into a word that doesn't look anything like an elephant. So now our brain has to do another task of reading the word elephant and then transcribing that into what an elephant is. So it's like another middle, it's like a middle task that is there for clarity. And like I said, some of the first writing, most of the first writings to ever exist they were transcribing transactions. They were documenting transactions is what I meant. Now, why that's important is because if the piece of document that I have that I owe you apples, now this is, no, you owe me. So if I have if I have a document that says that this person owes me a bushel of apples, this documented thing is now as valuable as a bushel of apples. So I could go to the jewelry person and then say, hey, here's an IOU that's worth a bundle of apples. And so, can I have this necklace for this bundle of apples? And this is where money started. Okay? This is where the whole concept of money started. This new dimension, guys, a lot of us are already there, right? When you look back in history and you study consciousness, like there was always sages. There was always sages, and yet we're still here. So money is actually a way that we can transcend the realities that we're existing in, right? It's really easy to go the opposite way where you don't have money. So if you had money and you want a new reality, it's really easy to just say like, all right, I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna go live in the woods. And I've done that. I had a business and I did that. And I learned from that environment. However, there's the reverse way where you can transcend realities, and it's unlimited potential, right? You eventually bottom out if you go the I'm gonna forsake money and I'm going to be an enunciate and I'm just gonna denounce everything. And did I say that word right? Probably not. Anyways, I'm just gonna get rid of everything, and you learn from the experience of just being with yourself. But there's a whole bunch of realities to exist with money. And so as much as we say like money's the root of all evil, or money stands for the monolithic I and we shouldn't be attached to it. No, we don't need to be attached to it, but it is another aspect of this reality that if you're choosing not to participate in, what's some of your favorite movies and shows? If you're choosing not to participate in it, then you're losing out on the perspectives that I was talking about that makes you more godly. And so money's an aspect of this reality, just like your body is, just like relating with other people is. And so we want to make sure that we're not ignoring it and that we understand our relationship with it. And so it's not about just choosing out of it, because that's not relating with it. It is our responsibility, and it's all of our responsibilities to learn our relationship with money and develop our relationship with money. And if you're not doing that, that's fine. Just make sure that you're aware that if you are casting judgment on those that have money, or even yourself having money, that it's likely a program given to you by somebody who doesn't have money, that wasn't responsible for guiding you, like your parents, right? If you had parents who didn't have much money, they have to justify why the neighbor gets a new car and you guys have had the same car for 15 years. They justify that by reducing the value of that neighbor because they have money. That goes into you as a child, and then you grow up and you have this image of having money as wrong, and this is all the trauma that I get to work on in the business that I am in with Purium, because we have an ability to earn unlimited income. And so eventually everyone gets to their limit, and most of us has a limit, and that limit is double what you've ever made before in your life. And once you get to that limit, you literally have psychological breakdown because you can't comprehend what you are like in this new version of self. It's similar to breaking up with somebody. Have you guys imagined going through a breakup of somebody that you've loved for... Seema normally does this, but she just went and walked solar, so I have to figure this out. It's not plugged in. If you're going through a breakup, it's pretty hard, right? If we get past like the 2-week mark, even a few weeks, you're like, ugh, it hurts. I'm breaking up with this person. I feel like this isn't the way to go, or whatever. Oh yeah, it works. So if you're upset about breaking up with somebody after a couple years, Imagine what it would be like for you to break up with the self that you've known for the last 31 years. It's going to be difficult. Very, very difficult. So once again, have some tolerance for yourself and know that as you go through this life and you start progressing through the boundaries that you've set on yourself, that there's going to be a learning curve. And wealth is one of those things that we all have to learn how to be. When you have money, it doesn't just make everything easier. Here's an example. I know a lot of you have had employees before. The understanding, I'm going to put this over here so it's not so loud. The understanding that most of us have before we hire an employee is that the employee is going to make the tasks of our life or of our business easier for us. And so when we get the employee, almost all of us are surprised to learn that, holy crap, having the employee doesn't make things easier. It actually means that I need to level up in my responsibilities, meaning that I actually get more work because now I have to manage the employee. So not only do I still need to make sure that the job that the employee is doing is done correctly by the employee, I need to make sure that the employee is happy, fed when they go home, that they're getting paid enough, that they're not hating us or resenting us, that they have a place to park every single day, that they've got bathroom breaks, that they're happy. So it's like you still are responsible for the tasks that the employee gets, but now you're also responsible for the employee. It's the same thing with money. If you think about whatever economic scale you're at right now, you think that if you had X amount more money, things are going to be easier for you. It's funny when you reflect and you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize there's this much more responsibility with this much more money. And it's a fun thing to go through. So having money doesn't make things easier. There is, it's more dynamic. It's not exactly, it doesn't have to be difficult, but it's dynamic. You have to be more responsible. Okay, what are your favorite or most useful disciplines you practiced on the way to discovery for self? That's an epic question. Okay, so I wanted to finish off. All right. So for some reason, I practice life. The way that I think about it is that everything's kind of a game, and it's probably because I started playing hockey when I was 3 years old, and 3 to 23, and I immediately went from there into CrossFit, and I pretty much did CrossFit professionally for like 6 to 10 years. And so when it comes to evolving myself and how I think about getting better at things, I do it similarly to how I did sports, because that's what my programming is since I was 3 years old. When I was a kid, I didn't even know that school or money was important. All I knew that was important was getting the puck in the goal and having more points than the other team. That's what life was for me. So when it comes to developing myself on certain aspects, it's the same thing. You practice. You just practice. You set an intention and you practice. So something that most men, especially, maybe the other sexes, will be able to resonate with is road rage. Road rage. At one point, I was like, I actually don't think this is useful for me. So how can I get it out of my life? And so you just practice. And I remember that when I stopped saying things out loud, because before I was conscious about road rage, it was just quit saying it out loud, right? Can I quit saying, F this guy out loud in my car when I'm alone, right? Because that's easy to do. That's why I think we develop this sense of road rage, because if you're driving alone, there's no repercussions for saying certain things, so you just let it flow out. And eventually you become almost like dependent on having to express this out. So once I said I'm not going to say it out loud, that required me to practice not saying it out loud, but it didn't get rid of the urge to attack another person, right? So I just want to say that that took about 2 to 3 years for me to get the urge to react in and on the roads. 2 to 3 years, all right? And it's just like everything else. So if you want to get good at knowing a certain topic, like let's say you've heard about Bitcoin, or you heard about psychedelics, or you heard about consciousness, and you wanted to integrate that into your being so that you can operate with that tool, then intend on knowing that, and eventually you're going to look back after a couple years of practice or a few years of practice, and you're going to say, oh, I remember when I intended on knowing about this, and it's cool that I know a lot about this now, so much that maybe I can teach it. And when you teach it, that's another level of learning, because now you have people who have different perspectives than you, and you get to relay what you learned to these different perspectives, which then in fact gives you another perspective of gnosis on the stuff that you've accumulated over the last few years. So a teacher is really just another student. You get it? Like a teacher is, most people think a teacher is a teacher because they know more. A teacher, from my perspective, is part of a journey of a student. First you learn, and when you teach, you get to learn more. All right, I see Seema walking in. I think I'm going to sign off. Thank you guys all for joining me. The test broadcast on Facebook, so I didn't even broadcast that.